Yes, team, what is happening? And welcome back to another episode of Tryb Talk. So, again, today I want to speak a lot about a roadmap. And what I mean about a roadmap is, you know, laying out the path for you to get from A to B ultimately. So, same if you had a car and you were, going to IKEA, you'd need a sat nav probably to get there. Even if you've been driving there for the last 10 years, you'd probably still use your sat nav. That is the roadmap. It tells you how to get from A to B, how long that's going to take, what directions you need to take to get there, if you've got enough petrol, all that sort of stuff comes into play. So when you think about yourself and your goals, it's massively important to have a roadmap. And this is something that I've doubled down on with myself over the last 3 years, probably. Any time before that, I was always lacking clarity with what I was doing. Why am I doing it? How do I get there as optimally as I can? Why am I frustrated that I'm not making changes? Is ultimately because I didn't have a roadmap in order to get there. So every single person who comes on board with us has a roadmap. First, we think about what is the main goal, and this is what I want you to think about today: is where do you want to get to ultimately? That is the number one question. Like it could be, I want to drop 10 kilos of body fat, I want to drop dress size, I want to run a marathon, whatever it is. You have to set out the goal first because you have to be able to see a target to hit it, and that's where it always starts. So ultimately, you have to be really clear with where it is that you want to get to. And I got one of the questions that I get asked a lot of my clients when they come on board is I want to be in better shape. Well, that's what the goal is. But what that ultimately means is it might not just be mean cutting, it might be having more muscle tissue. Usually it means having more muscle tissue, having less body fat. But again, that ultimately means that we've got to go through phases of dieting and growing tissue, etc. So being really specific with what the goal is, like what is it that you want to achieve? Okay, let's use the analogy of a marathon just because it's in our head, it's new. What marathon are you going to run? When's that going to be? Is it going to be a date? Is it going to be on your own back? And then you start to plan for it from there. So, for example, the Chester Marathon, which is in October. If you know that as a goal, you know that's what you've set out to do. You then have to work backwards to understand what you need to do to get there, what that looks like. Obviously, we know how long that's going to take because we've got to set the goal and also what the steps that you've got to do to get there. So, you always forward think but backwards plan. So for example, let's use that. The goal is I want to run the Chester Marathon in October. That's the goal. From there, we need to assess, okay, if that is the goal, have we got anything in mind? Do we want to set a certain time? Or we just want to do it for enjoyment? Like, get really, really clear on the goal and be like, why? Ask why 3 times. I want to run the Chester Marathon, but why? Because I want to run a sub 4 hour, but why? Because I want to test myself to my limits. Once you've got all them in place, then you can start to set the plan ultimately. So for that, for example, you'd work out how long that you've got to get there and what mileage you have to get there, for example. That's just a one example for a roadmap, but let's go to the other side of things. Let's go more towards the physique side of things, the development side of things, fat loss, fitness journey, personal progression, that sort of thing. We take our clients through 4 phases, and I think this is really, really important for every single person to do, is especially phase number 1. So we break it down into 4 phases ultimately because we know that if we say in 6 months time we're going to be 10 kilos less or 15 kilos less or have more muscle mass or whatever, we're going to have to break that down into chunks because would you want to diet for 6 months straight? Probably not. But again, you've got to go through phases of stuff. So the 4 phases that we have with our clientele is, number 1 is priming. So what the priming phase basically is as it sounds, it's, you're getting primed for the next phase of things. So you're getting your routines in place, you're getting familiar with myself, you're getting familiar with going to the gym 3 times a week, you're getting familiar with when you do your step count, your food chop, planning your daily nutrition, all these sorts of things, but you're not really pushing optimally. You're not really restricting yourself. You're basically getting things in a good position. And again, you can use loads of analogies for this, but you can't build a house without a solid foundation. And that's exactly what the priming phase is. We're setting a foundation so that we can build on top of that. Whereas 9 times out of 10, 9 fitness programs out of 10 will just put you straight into the floor without any sort of support, any sort of structure, any sort of foundation, and expect you to get to the end of it and know why you've got there, or have habits that last a lifetime. Unfortunately, that is not the case. We've got to get into a solid routine first. We've got to get primed. We've got to get ready for us then optimize things. Because again, if you look back to if you try to do this 4, 5, 10 times, how many times have you succeeded? Probably not that many if you're still trying to do it. But ultimately, why is that? Did you rush the process? Did you try and go too hard too quickly? Did you have a solid roadmap? Did you have a plan? Probably not. So priming phase, again, can be somewhere between a week, it can be 4 weeks, whatever it is, to set the real foundation for what you're trying to build. And again, from there, we go into the progression phase, and action leads to more motivation. So the progression phase is, again, as it says, we're looking to progress as much as we can. So that's like the primary goal. If your goal is to drop 10 kilos, that's what we'll achieve in that progression phase. So number one, you've been primed, so you know exactly what you're doing, why you're doing it, how to do it, because you've been doing it. And then number two is progression, and that's where we really start to optimize things. Okay, we're going to be losing X amount per week. We're going to be aiming to do this amount of sessions. Might include this, might include running, cardio, drop your nutrition, whatever it is. We start to do that in that second phase. And what I mean about action leads to motivation is, in the priming phase, you'll see things happening. You'll see you getting into a routine. You'll see yourself being able to tick off 3 sessions, starting to lose body fat, starting to get tighter, starting to feel happier, healthier, more confident. And that's going to lead you to push even further. And that's exactly what we're after. We want to give you a good win, and then you can push into the second phase of the progression phase. Again, as I said, the progression phase is just the primary goal. So that might be 3 months, it might be 6 months, it might be 12 months, depending on how much weight that you want to lose, for example, or when the race is, or whatever that may be. That is that time frame. Once that's completed, so once you're down 10 kilos, what we try and do is we try to lose around 10% of your body weight, which is usually around 8 to 10 kilos in the first 3 to 4 months. So you're 4 months in, you've lost 10 kilos, you've been smashing it, you've been training 3 times a week, 4 times a week. What happens then? And that's where we have a maintenance phase. That's just phase number 3. So the maintenance phase is basically getting you to a position where you're comfortable and then maintaining that, whether that be for 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, depending on the individual. We want to sit you there, and from there we'll increase calories, get you used to having a little bit more food without feeling guilty for it, understanding this is what's going to be happening. You're not going to pile on loads of body fat, you're not going to pile on loads of water weight, etc. And just really focusing on staying there for the time being. For some clients, we do that for a week, 2 weeks. Some clients, I've done that for 3-6 months. It just depends on where they're at psychologically, what their end goal is, male, female, etc. Then phase 4 is the progression phase. And this is the phase where you got to the solid position, you've maintained that level of result. What next? And this is where we again reassess and reset performance-based goals. So that might be, okay, you've dropped 10 kilos of body fat, but you're not where you want to be physically. Okay, let's go through a phase of growing muscle tissue. Let's get really strong in the gym. Let's start to add tissue to the frame that you've got and start to build out a physique that you've always wanted. Or number 2, this is the phase where people go, well, I've done the fat loss side of things. Okay, I want to get really good at that. I want to start pushing towards marathons or half marathons or a fast 10K or whatever. What you'll find is that people will start to do that in phase 2 when they're progressing. They want to see progression from physique and performance at the same time, which is usually the case. A lot of our clients have done that. But the performance phase is purely about what's after that initial period is done. So basically you're resetting goals and then going after it again. But as you can see, if you have that roadmap, that could be somewhere between 4 and 6 months. We've just laid out 6 months of your next 6 months, step by step. And again, we do this individually week by week, and how you're going to get from A to point B and what you need to do to get there. How much more clarity do you have by knowing that you can get there by doing X and you'll get Y? It's that simple. The same way that you would put it into your sat nav and go, okay, it's going to take me 23 minutes to get to this place. I've just got to follow these directions. There's no traffic, etc. Okay, happy days. It's the same thing. So that's really the importance of a roadmap, is knowing exactly what you're doing, why you're doing it, and ultimately how to get there. So looking at my notes, we've talked about clarity. You get clarity from doing this because you know exactly what you're doing, due to the direction that you're taking, and what happens then. Because you know exactly what you're doing, you know how to do it and how long that's roughly going to take, you're faster at getting there. And what I mean by faster at getting there is faster than you are without a roadmap. So imagine if you had no roadmap, you sort of, should I do a left here? Should I do a right here? I'm not sure on that. Should I be doing that? I'm unsure. Is that the best thing to do? Should I do this? I'm putting on too much weight. I'm losing too much weight. You can see what I'm getting at. So what you could achieve in 6 months, often people never get there because they constantly don't know which way to turn, i.e. with the sat nav, they don't know which way to go, they don't know how long it's going to take, what you should be doing to get there, if they're doing the right thing. Trust me, I've been there myself. I've done it. I've wore the hat, I've wore the t-shirt, whatever it is. I've been there. And then number 4 is, especially from a coaching point of view, is experience. Someone who's been there before, and I've done that, and I've had no roadmap, but then I've also had a roadmap, and understanding. I know, looking at individual people, where they have to get to, what they have to do to get where they want to get to. So if someone says, I want to drop 10 kilos, okay, I know that's 1% per week. That might be something about 12 weeks. All right, sound, no problem. What do we need to do? Obviously, we need to put them into a calorie deficit. How do we do that? We look at what they're currently doing, optimize that. Are they training? Are they moving? Do they like swimming? What are they doing? And then fix all that and put that into a roadmap for them to adhere to, which they can enjoy. You know exactly what they're doing, and you get there. So experience comes into play as well. Same way that you would hire a coach, same ways that I would hire a mentor. They've walked the path in front of me, so they lay out the path for me a lot faster. And I speak about this with some of the coaches that I coach. So I often help a few coaches with, we call it the Leaders Program, with their body and their business. And ultimately the goal of that is to get them far further than me in a shorter time frame. And that's the whole point of mentorship, is that every client that I coach in a fat loss perspective, I get them to the goal faster than what I got myself to the goal years ago. I'm taking the thinking out of it for them. I'm showing them the things that work, the things that didn't work, and I'm getting rid of them and giving them the clear path for them to go and tick off and get to where they want to be. So let's round it up here. That's the importance of a roadmap. If you haven't got a roadmap, make sure you're setting one. As I said, what is the final short-term, medium, long-term goal? Marathon, 10 kilos, whatever it is, and then work backwards. What it could be a holiday. What does that look like? And then what do you have to do month on month? What do you have to do week on week? What do you have to do day on day? How long is that going to take, etc, etc. Obviously, if you have any questions about this, put a comment below this video. Drop me a message on Instagram at lewisneal_coaching. Drop Tryb_coaching a message as well. Whatever you need from us, we'll support you as much as we can. So yeah, if you find these little talks useful, again, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, whatever you're listening to it. And yeah, I'll catch you in the next episode of Tryb Talks.